Cape Cod. Since he'll be there late tonight or early tomorrow, I thought it would be good to spend some time with my son, just the two of us. He's felt pushed aside since Dad got sick. I'm hoping some concentrated attention will make him feel a little better, or at least a little less rebellious. After he completed his schoolwork for the day, we drove out to Mattituck, our favorite place. I considered driving out to Mattituck this morning, but the thought of getting there early and not having Dad to greet us, not having Dad to make us breakfast, was too sad. So we left at 2:30. Back before the pandemic struck, I never would have considered leaving at such an absurd time. The heart of rush hour. Traffic would have killed me. But there is no rush hour. Nor is there traffic. I stopped for gas in Jersey. $1.85 a gallon. And I still made better time than I used to make leaving at 5:30 in the morning. It feels weird being here, just the two of us. It's like part of me expects Mom and Dad to walk in at any moment. Still, it's far more peaceful than being in Bedminster. My body doesn't shake as much and I don't feel as tightly wound. When we arrived, we ate dinner, and then my son wanted to work on another puzzle. After it got dark, we went back out. We went out back. Thanks for the love. Hello, Kathy. After it got dark, we went out back, sat on the deck and watched the meteor shower for a short while, until my son got cold and wanted to come back inside. Now he is in bed, and an eeriness has settled over the house. It's not supposed to be this quiet. I'm supposed to hear the television in my parents' bedroom, or their snores. Something other than the wind. Snapshot rewind. 2010 to 2017. My son loved going to Long Island for a long weekend every fall. We'd go out. I think I need to go back because I said the numbers differently. (2010 to 2017). 2010 to 2017. I don't remember how I said it in all of the other snapshot rewinds. I think I did 2 years. 2010 to 2017. My son loved going to Long Island for a long weekend every fall. We'd go out around Nona's birthday, October 19th, and Grandpa would spoil him, perhaps a little more than usual. Mom would buy him costumes, pirate, Batman, Spider-Man, or masks and swords, and she'd put them on his bed so when he got there he'd see them and get excited. She bought them not for Halloween costumes, but because he enjoyed wearing costumes. He'd put one on and Dad would take us apple picking or pumpkin picking. We picked more apples than we could possibly eat, and my son always took home a pumpkin along with several gourds. All he had to do was ask, and Grandpa would pay for whatever he wanted. Spending a day in the play area at Harb's farm was something that always excited my son. He'd ride the bikes, visit the goats, play with the rubber duckies. Play with the rubber duckies. I lost my spot. Oh, it's because it scrolled on me. Play with the rubber duckies at the water pump and jump in the bounce house. In between, he'd eat popcorn. Nope. No, he wouldn't. Play with the rubber duckies at the water pump and jump in the bounce house. In between, he'd eat corn on the cob, which Dad bought at the farm stand, and play on the tractor. He loved pretending to drive it. His absolute favorite activity was walking through the corn maze, which had a Sherwood Forest theme. We did it several years. but we, the adults, always got lost and frustrated that we couldn't find our way out. My son never seemed to care. He'd push on, smiling, convinced he was going the correct way. He'd push on, smiling. There's too much of a pause, and my page scrolled again. Do. He'd push on, smiling, convinced he was going the correct way, even though we knew we'd already tried that direction and would end up at a dead end. Shooting the arrows was always fun, but it was the end, when one person in each party got to sword fight against Robin Hood, that my son enjoyed most. Let me do that again because it's a different intonation. Okay, but it was the end. But it was the end, when one person in each party got to sword fight against Robin Hood, that my son enjoyed the most. He took it very seriously, and when he won, he believed he had saved us all. Alrighty, day 51. Day 51, May 5th, 2020. When I was young, I had a collection of Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales. Mom and Dad would take turns, alternating nights reading to me before bed. Mom warns Dad not to read me The Red Shoes. It was terribly sad, and she didn't want me to cry, but I begged Dad to read it, and he did. Sure enough, by the end of the story, I was sobbing. Nothing Dad said could console me. When he asked Mom what he should do, she scolded him. I told you not to read it to her. Hans Christian Andersen has always been one of my favorite storytellers, and the more his stories made me cry, the more I liked them. I suppose that element of sorrow and sadness is the reason I have always felt drawn to Andersen's stories. They didn't always end happily ever after. They were realistic and therefore more relatable. So maybe I did get a fairy tale ending after all. Only it was the Andersen variety. One that ended in death and brought tears to readers, like The Little Match Girl and The Little Mermaid, before Disney sabotaged the ending. Years ago, in the winter of 2004, I visited Denmark for a week. My dad's ancestry. I can say that word. My dad's Why can't I say that? Ancestry. My dad's ancestry was partially Danish. Or we always believed it was until he had his DNA tested and not a single drop of Danes showed up anywhere. His mother's maiden name was Rasmussen, one of the more common Danish surnames. I wanted to go to Denmark to see where my ancestors had come from. I had already visited Germany and Italy on prior trips, and to visit the childhood home of Hans Christian Andersen. I have always liked visiting the houses of famous dead people. Yes, it's the history and personal stories that I enjoy. Yes, it's the history and personal stories that I enjoy learning most, but also, sometimes, if I'm still enough and the sun hits the window just right, I can almost catch a glimpse of their essence, a ghostly encounter of sorts. Though it is fleeting, it's a way to connect with them through time. To get to Hans's house, I had to travel by train from Copenhagen to Odense. Let me check the pronunciation. Denmark pronunciation.
Odense.
Odense. Odense. To get to Hans's house, I had to travel by train from Copenhagen to Odense. But I've often said I lived under a dark cloud. I live. But I've often said I live under a dark cloud, and that afternoon the cloud was definitely present. I traveled all that way to discover that his house was closed for renovations. This was before easy internet access on smartphones, websites at your fingertips to give you updates on closing and other pertinent information. So I had no idea until I arrived. I was devastated. Like some of his stories, my adventure would end in disappointment. Like some of his stories. Like some of his stories, my adventure would end in disappointment. But at least there was a museum to explore. Museum. But at least there was a museum to explore, so it wasn't like I wasted my time completely. Dad died 3 weeks ago. As of this morning, when I turn on the news, 69 turned. As of this morning, when I turned on the news, 69,000 Americans have died. That means 69,000 families are crushed, mourning the loss of a loved one. I am not alone. But now the president and his son-in-law are trying to rewrite the script regarding the death toll. In an interview last week, April 29th, Jared Kushner said, "So the government, federal government, rose to the challenge, and this is a great success story, and I think that that's really what needs to be told." Let me be clear. Anything that involved the death of my father. Let me be clear. Anything that involved the death. I need to enunciate. Anything that involved the death of my father is not a success story. Anything that claimed more lives than Vietnam in a fraction of the time is not a success story. How can anyone look at the numbers and claim success? What Kushner and Trump need is a tour of the New York City cemeteries and crematoriums. They need to talk to the grave diggers and the families that are no longer whole. The families that have been left with nothing but memories of the people they once cherished. Let me clarify. The families that have been left with nothing but memories of the people they once cherished. They need to read this book. But they won't do any of that because they don't care about people. That has been evident from the start. If they ignore the reality, the facts in front of them, and we know Trump is exceptionally gifted at ignoring facts, they can make up any story they want. And that is exactly what they are doing. The super sad thing about it is many Americans will believe them because they too care more about money and superficial things, like eating out in a restaurant, than they care about human lives. My dad, and 69,000 other people, is nothing more than a statistic to them. But to me, Dad was everything. I contrast to Trump, Cuomo. In contrast, there we go. In contrast to Trump, Cuomo genuinely appears to care about the residents of New York. Since the beginning of this pandemic, since the moment that Cuomo had a grasp of how horrific it is, he has done his best to combat it, to protect and save as many New Yorkers as possible. If Cuomo had the same intel Trump did back in January, Dad might not have died, because Cuomo would have told the truth. And the truth, I believe, would have kept my father off that boat. But Cuomo is only a governor, not a president, so he doesn't have the same access to information, especially on the world's stage. This afternoon, Governor Cuomo once again earns my respect when, unlike Trump, he emphasized the fact that he values people over money. He explains to New Yorkers, the faster we reopen, the lower the economic cost, but the higher the human cost. It's a simple enough equation. Unfortunately, there are people out there who are willing to sacrifice more people for the sake of the economy. Cuomo made it clear that such an atrocity would not happen on his watch. How much is a human life worth? That's the real discussion that no one has admitted to That's the real discussion that no one has admitted openly and freely, but we should. To me, I say a human life is priceless. I say the most of a human life. To me, I say the most of human life. A human life is priceless, he says. Yes, he too wants to reopen New York, but not if it means filling more cemetery plots. I finally finished reading Pale Rider. It was published in 2017, only 3 years ago, and it ends with a warning that another pandemic will most definitely occur. At the time, scientists believed it would be another strand of the flu. The fact that it was something else does not excuse the president's inaction. Several agencies around the world, including the CDC, were tasked with monitoring for a future outbreak. Thanks for the love. Morning, Brittany. Thanks for being here. Were tasked with monitoring for a future outbreak. They knew it was coming. But instead of ramping up surveillance, Trump disbanded the pandemic response team, according to Spinny. I have a funky pause. Okay. But instead... Bloop. Oh, it was good. It was good. I did more reading and prepping for the next book, and I should finish this book today and be able to start the next one in a couple of days. I need to send in a checkpoint and make sure that the author likes what I'm doing, and then I should be able to start recording. So that'll be exciting. Yeah. Less sadness, hopefully. Though there's, still death and stuff in fantasy books. But it's fake death. But instead of ramping up. I took Monday off. I couldn't keep my eyes open. So, I don't know if I'll be taking days off from live recording. I'm going to try and send that author a checkpoint tonight. And if she approves it, then I might be able to start recording tomorrow. But it will depend on what she does. Radio, but instead... But instead of ramping up surveillance, Trump disbanded the pandemic response team. According to Spiny on page... Spinny. According to Spinny on page 282, The media clearly have a critical role to play in future pandemics. In any future pandemic. Just read the words on the page, girlfriend. Thank you. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. The media clearly have a critical role to play in any future pandemic, and 1918 taught us a valuable lesson in this too. Censorship and playing down the danger don't work. Relaying accurate information in an objective and timely fashion does. Information and engagement are not the same thing, however. Even when people have information, they need to contain the disease. They do not necessarily... I said that with the wrong emphasis on the wrong... Even when people have the information they need to contain the disease, they do not necessarily act on it. There are many news stations that are currently trying to give us the truth, an accurate picture of what we need to know. Sadly, Trump continuously accuses them of being fake news. He doesn't like the truth because the truth makes him look like the bumbling, selfish idiot he is. But let's look more closely at exactly what Spinney said. Censorship and playing down the danger don't work. Thanks to the First Amendment, censorship is illegal. But Trump certainly did downplay the danger. See day 37. He told us not to worry. He told us it was under control. He promised it would go away. He should have said back in January, the coronavirus has arrived in America. We can't control it, and it has the potential to kill you or your loved ones if you are not careful. But as Spinney pointed out, even when people have the necessary information, they do not act on it. And that is Trump's greatest fault. So Kushner is absolutely wrong when he tries to portray this as a success story. Trump had the information, and for too long, he did nothing. His lack of action cost the lives of too many people. His apathy robbed my son of his grandfather. After reading the news this evening, it looks like Trump is determined to rob more children of their grandparents. In an interview with ABC News, he once again emphasized his desire to reopen the country regardless of the consequences. He callously commented, "I'm not saying anything is perfect, and yes, will some people be affected? Yes. Will some people be badly affected? Affected badly. Will some people be affected badly? Yes. But we have to get our country open, and we have to open it soon. And we have to get it open soon. And we have to get it open soon. What more proof do you need that this man cares only about money? Cares more about money? I'm just filling in extra words because I feel like it. It's fun. Okay, what more proof? What more proof do you need that this man cares more about money than people? On one hand, you have Cuomo stating a human life is priceless, and on the other, you essentially have the president saying, fuck the people. They can die as long as my economy doesn't suffer. But it gets better. Seriously, if I were writing a novel instead of a nonfiction piece, this is about where I'd start to question if I went over the top in making Trump the villain. I can almost hear my writing friends saying, but he can't be all bad. He needs some redeeming quality. Nope, not in this case. There is no redeeming quality about him. Not in my opinion. Trump went on to say, I always felt 60, 65, 70, as horrible as that is. I mean, you're talking about filling up Yankee Stadium with death. So, I thought it was horrible, but it's probably going to be somewhat higher than that. And he says it as if it's not a big deal. Something we just have to accept. That's fair, as we all do. I feel like I just, I don't know. I have that, text prediction and going on in my head and not using my eyes to read. I suppose it's nice when you're not reading aloud to the class when that happens, but I'm reading aloud to the whole of the internet who wishes to be here while I do it, so that's exciting. Yet here's the deal. Those aren't abstract numbers. Each death was a person, a human being who had a family. My father wasn't just a statistic. He was my dad. He was the man my son couldn't wait to talk to every morning. The man who made my son laugh by making silly faces. There is a huge gaping hole in my life, in my mother's life, and in my son's life, and none of us give a shit about the economy at the moment. And I guarantee we are not the only Americans who feel this way. As I write, the death toll nears 72,000. Yesterday, Governor Murphy, I almost said Cuomo again. Yesterday, Governor Murphy said New Jersey schools will remain closed for the duration of the school year. That means my son and hundreds of thousands of other New Jersey students will finish out the year learning remotely. I've seen quite a bit of grumbling on social media about kids and parents who are annoyed there won't be a graduation or prom this year. It sucks. It's unfortunate. But it could be worse. If you are only mourning the loss of 1 year of activities, you are relatively lucky. Think of all the families, the children and grandchildren and spouses of someone who died. They are mourning the loss of an entire future of activities. Murphy should probably just end the school year. While teachers are working harder than they ever have before, I'm not really sure students are learning. My son isn't. Remote activities, videos, games, educational websites don't compare to being in school. They can't. What's the point of battling my child to get to work done? Bloop. What's the point? Yes, the whole internet. So exciting. What's the point? What's the point of battling my child to get work done when I know that he will be no better off if he does it? Who are we trying to appease with this facade, this false idea that kids are being educated? After my son completed his schoolwork, we went outside to play. I dug out our old badminton rackets and a shuttlecock that's older than he is. As he was tying his shoes, he looked up at me and smiled sadly. I wish I could play with Grandpa, he said. I know. I wish he could play with him too. Snapshot Rewind, 2000. It was late July and Mom and Dad were heading over to the Bay Beach. It was late July and Mom and Dad were heading over to the Bay Beach in Peconic. Bleh. I'm gonna get it. Third time's a charm. It was late July, and Mom and Dad were heading over to the Bay Beach in Peconic that we really like. I told them I'd join them later in the day. Since I wanted to go for a bike ride, I would bike over to the beach. They waited for me to get there to have lunch, and then we went swimming. When it started to get late, they left, and I told them I'd meet them at home in an hour. But I never made it. I hadn't even biked a half mile when a woman rolled through a stop sign and smashed into me. She hit me hard enough that I flew off my bike and into the air. I crashed headfirst into the hood of her car and then rolled off, my body smacking the road. I was wearing a helmet. If I hadn't been, I might have died or suffered brain damage because the helmet was cracked right down the middle. My entire body hurt. I couldn't even get up. Someone called 911 and an ambulance took me to the hospital in Greenport. I remember asking the cop who showed up to call my parents. Of course he didn't. He couldn't be bothered. He also lied on the police report saying that I was biking on the wrong side of the road. If that was correct, I never would have been hit. It's simple logic. Either the cop wasn't terribly bright, or he knew the woman who hit me and was trying to help her. Either way, it's proof that cops can't be trusted. Anyway, since the cop was too lazy to call my parents, they sat at home waiting for me. When I didn't arrive on time, they panicked. They knew something bad happened because I was always one of those kids who did as I said I would. Dad called the local hospitals. When he got through to the one in Greenport, they said someone matching my description had been brought in. He and Mom immediately got into the car and raced to the hospital to see if I was okay. It could have been worse. I could have died. But I had broken a thumb. I had a broken thumb, a cracked sternum, and bruises all over my body. After a series of x-rays and other tests, the doctors finally let me leave. Mom and Dad took me home, where they made me rest on the couch. We ended up having Chinese food for dinner and watching the movie Angel's Ashes. And that is how I paid for my first master's degree. With the settlement from the lawsuit, I was able to pay off my loans. That happened to my brother-in-law, too. We joked with him a couple years ago he should probably get hit by another car because the economy's not very good. Don't do that for real. It's bad. You might not make it. Boop, boop. Yeah, awful, right? I'm pretty sure he was like in a biking lane too. People in cars don't pay attention. Yeah, they do. They do. Day 52, May 6th, 2020. Last night, my son insisted on making chocolate ice cream sodas. Almost every night we spent here in the summers, Dad made them for us. But he's not here to make them anymore. So my son stepped into the role. Yesterday afternoon, when I was leaving to go grocery shopping, my son said, "Make sure you get milk, seltzer, and chocolate ice cream." He had already checked. There was still some chocolate syrup in the refrigerator from the last time Dad was there. After dinner, my son wouldn't let me help him make the sodas. "I used to watch Grandpa," he explained. "I know how to do it. It's my job now." And he did know how, because it tasted just like Dad's. Yeah. I know how my brother-in-law's so lucky. He ended up, I think, with a broken arm and bruised, and that was it. That was like on a college campus too, so I don't even know how they were getting around and driving so fast. That people, I tell ya. Yesterday for dinner, I barbecued sausages for my son. As I stood at Dad's grill, a Manhattan... I can do it. A Manhattan in one hand and tongs in the other, smoke curling up from the meat. I thought of all the times Dad grilled when I was a kid. He'd bring out the meat on a plate and call over his shoulder. Liz, get the gloves. While dinner was cooking, he and I would play catch. Oh, the hours he spent, and he and I spent. Oh, the hours he and I spent. Oh, the hours he and I spent playing catch. The funeral home finally called to let Mom know she could pick up Dad's ashes. My brother drove her to get them, and the funeral home people handed Dad's ashes over in the parking lot. That really upset Mom. She couldn't go inside because of the pandemic. Blup, I'm tripping over my face. She couldn't go inside because of the pandemic, because everything is closed. But getting her husband's ashes in a parking lot seemed so cold, so impersonal, as if he were never a person at all. And now it seems so final. The man I loved, the man who wiped away my tears countless times, the man who I didn't hug nearly long enough the last time I saw him, is now nothing more than a pile of ashes. This afternoon is damp. This afternoon, it was cloudy and damp, but I suggested we go outside for a little while anyway. Fresh air is always good. But nothing I recommended. A walk, badminton, a trip to the beach interested my son. While brainstorming ideas, he said, "I wish I had a kite." At which point I remembered that one summer, either last year or the year before, he got a kite at one of his summer reading prizes. Ha. At which point I remembered that one summer, either last year or the year before, he got a kite as one of his summer reading. At which point I remembered that one summer. Jeez, now I'm not even getting the first part right. At which point I remembered that one summer, either last year or the year before, he got a kite as one of his summer reading prizes from the Mattatuck Library. Sure enough, when he looked in the dresser, his dresser. Sure enough, when he looked in his dresser, he found one of those inexpensive kites. This one was designed to look like an American flag. The upper left-hand corner was blue with one big white star and a few smaller ones. I said that funny. The upper left-hand corner was blue with one big white star and a few smaller ones. The rest of the kite had red and white stripes. After taking it out, my son rummaged in his craft box for a black marker. Then he proceeded to write, "Trump killed my grandpa, so dump Trump," on the kite. I chuckled. If Dad were here, he'd have smiled. That small political act would have made him proud. Veterans Beach was cold, but the wind did not disappoint. My son enjoyed flying the kite. Watching him, I thought of my dad. Daddy hated flying kites. He found it boring. But I still remember him taking me and my brother to that very same beach nearly 40 years ago. It had been a cloudy day, too cool to go swimming, and so he brought us to the beach to fly kites. Being outside and doing something was always better than sitting inside and doing nothing, even if that meant something didn't excite Dad. Thanks for the follow, Deanna. He just wanted to make sure we were having fun. I also remember him flying a kite with my son, again at that same place we were today. My son was littler, and Dad patiently tried to help him get the kite. And Dad patiently tried to help him get the kite aloft. Dad definitely mellowed as he got older. When it came to my son, he had more patience than he ever had with me as a child. Snapshot rewind, 2013 to 2017. My son loved Treasure Beach, which is what he called the Bay Beach in the Peconic. Oh, fudge. It's scrolling my pages. My son. My son loved Treasure Beach, which is what he called the Bay Beach out in Peconic. I liked it too. Sometimes when we went to that beach, Dad and I would strap the kayaks to the roof of the car. My son was too little to go out on his own, so he'd sit in my lap, and Dad and I would paddle our way through the inlet. Dad liked to go slow and enjoy the scenery. He'd take a few strokes and then hold the paddle up to his chest, parallel to the water, and simply drift. We liked Treasure Beach because the water in the channel was deep. We could dive in and the water would be over our head. I liked swimming across the channel. When my son was little, I'd push him across on his tube. As he got older and took swimming lessons, he would swim across with me. On the other side of the channel, the beach formed a peninsula. On the other side of the channel, the beach formed a peninsula, but my son called it an island. One day, he must have been about 4, he got it into his head that pirates buried treasure on that beach, so he took his shovel, asked me to push him to the other side, and he started to dig. Obviously, he didn't find anything, but that gave us an idea. In the city, Mom went to a craft store. She bought 3 little wooden treasure boxes and some fake jewels. The next time we visited, she was prepared. While getting ready for the beach, I filled the boxes with the fake jewels, and Dad gave me some quarters. At the beach, we all swam across the channel. As Mom and Dad took my son in one direction to hunt for treasure, I set off in the opposite direction to bury the treasure. I marked each spot with a different wood X. After signaling to my parents that I was done, they directed him over. Funky paws. After signaling to my parents that I was done, they directed him over to where the treasure waited for him. The first time he dug out. The first time he dug out a treasure box, he squealed with delight. He believed he had found real pirate treasure. Each time we went to that beach, there was a treasure to find. But as he got older, I had to employ more and more stealth so that he didn't suspect I was the pirate. A couple of years ago, we stopped going to Treasure Beach. My son was disappointed, but the walk on the sands from the car to the beach was too far for Mom. Dad said her knees couldn't take the strain. All right, day 53. And some water. Thank you. Day 53, May 7th, 2020. It's odd being in this house and being the adult. Being the parent instead of the child. Sure, I've been an adult for decades now, but whenever I came home, I still felt like a kid. Even when I brought my own child with me, Mom and Dad took care of both of us. The both of us. Even when I brought my own child with me, Mom and Dad took care of the both of us. Dad went grocery shopping, Mom cooked dinner. But now that it's just me and my son, I'm the one taking care of him. Yes, I've been taking care of him for 10 years, but being here is different. When I'm here, I'm used to being able to let go of responsibility. Life was carefree because Mom and Dad kept the world turning, and I was free to enjoy the moment. This house is my son's art gallery. All around, especially on the mantel of the fireplace, are his pictures and crafts, gifts he made for my parents on their birthdays, on Mother's Day and Father's Day. Since this is where we usually saw my parents on those occasions, the gifts remained here as a reminder of a grandson's love for his grandparents. There are hedgehogs, 3, to represent him, Nona, and Grandpa. He made by cutting spheres of styrofoam in half, sticking toothpicks into the body for quills, and adding googly eyes and some paint. There is a crab he made from a paper plate he painted red. It has hands. His hands traced and cut out instead of claws. A picture of my son and Grandpa is framed with painted popsicle sticks. A picture of my son and Grandpa is framed with painted. A picture of my son and Grandpa is framed with painted popsicle sticks and the words "Number 1 Grandpa." One framed picture has 2 handprints, instead of flowers, attached to pipe cleaner stems stuck in a vase. A Teddy Roosevelt bear flies a kite with a key to represent Dad's 2 favorite historical Americans. A glass of wine and a hand pouring of... Okay. A glass of wine... Why? A glass of wine and a hand pouring a bottle are painted on a board that was meant to be broken at Taekwondo. There are pictures of fish, sharks, and boats everywhere because even as a toddler, my son knew that Dad loved the water and all things associated with it. I spoke to Mom this morning. She slept better last night than she had in a while. Having Dad's ashes. Having Dad's ashes put her more at ease. He's home now, she said, and I couldn't quite share her relief. When I said I wanted Daddy to come home, that wasn't exactly what I had in mind. It's not what she wanted either, but at least she's no longer fretting that his body might somehow have gotten lost in the masses of the dead that filled with... But at least she's no longer fretting that his body might somehow have gotten lost in the masses of the dead that have filled New York City's morgues. I can't even imagine how awful this is for her. My parents were married for 48 years. None of us saw any reason to suspect that they wouldn't easily make it at least to 50. Make it to at least 50. None of us. None of us saw any reason to suspect they wouldn't easily make it to at least 50. Okay. We be wording things in ways my brain is not up for saying. None of us saw any reason to suspect they wouldn't easily make it to at least 50. Since Dad retired, they were practically inseparable. They did everything together. And now, so unexpectedly, Mom is alone. Yes, she has her children and her grandchild, but it isn't the same. And once the pandemic ends, I won't be able to stay with her weekly in New York because my son will have to go back to school. I've suggested she move to Jersey, that we look for a 2-family house, but she isn't ready to move. She isn't ready to leave the house she lived in with Dad for 42 years, the house in which they formed so many memories together. But she doesn't drive, and she doesn't walk well. How will she get around? How will she get groceries? After lunch, my son and I went to Magic Fountain for ice cream. Dad didn't like the ice cream there. Neither did Mom. But we went there often in the last several years because it made my son happy. We went there when I was a kid also, though it was probably under different management. But the real treat was when Dad took us into Greenport to get ice cream at Razzles. That place was awesome. Mom and Dad used to get butter pecan ice cream on sugar cones. My brother would order chocolate chip ice cream, also on a sugar cone. But I don't have a clue as to what I used to have. Why is that? Why? Why is that? Why can I remember everyone else but not me? Blip. Why can I remember everyone else but not me? Maybe it's as simple as not being as predictable. Maybe I got something different each time. Back when I was still in high school, my cousin got married on Shelter Island. On the way home from the wedding, we stopped at Razzles. I think that was the last time we went. They have long since closed, and we have yet to find a place out there that is as good. My son and I took our ice cream to the beach, and we sat on the sand by the water to eat it. Thanks for staying on, even though you're muting. I appreciate it. I do that too. Sometimes I'm working when I record, and I turn whoever I'm listening to down and just keep tapping. It's very helpful, so I appreciate it. My son and I. Thank you. My son and I took our ice cream to the beach, and we sat on the sand by the water to eat it. When we finished, my son took Mom's metal detector to hunt for treasure, and we walked down the beach as far as we could, until the water pressed up against the bulkhead. Along the way, we passed the yacht club and the softball field where I used to play. Every summer during college, I joined the women's softball club out here. I played shortstop for the Fisherman's Rest team. It was fun, something to look forward to every week. Of course, Mom and Dad came to every game to cheer me on. The year we won the championship, one of my teammates had a party at her pool to celebrate. She even invited Mom and Dad to come because she felt as if they were part of the team. Though we had an enjoyable walk, my son was disappointed not to find any treasure. All he uncovered was a rusty nail, a rusty knife blade. All he uncovered was a rusty nail, a rusty knife blade, and a huge rectangular chunk of metal. No sign of Captain Kidd's treasure. Nothing worth keeping. But being at the beach is better than just being anywhere else during the lockdown. It is quiet. But being at the beach is better than being. But being at the beach is better than being just about anywhere else during the lockdown. It is quiet, peaceful, and relatively empty. It felt like spring. There was only a light breeze and the water was calm. If only Dad was there, it would have been perfect. For dinner, my son wanted a hamburger, but Daddy wasn't there to cook it, which meant the job fell to me. However, I never barbecued a hamburger. I avoid meat whenever possible, and I couldn't even call Dad to ask him how to cook it. So I called my spouse. She laughed and gave me vague instructions. Put the meat on the flame, cook it for a few minutes, then flip it. I asked what she meant by a few minutes, and she said, "When you think it might be ready." It seemed daunting, but I suppose the directions were good enough. Or maybe Dad was somehow lending a spiritual hand, because according to my son, the burger came out good. Snapshot rewind, circa 2014 and 2015. I taught my son how to read when he was 3. My students in Korea had been 2. I figured if I could teach them, why not teach my own son? I gave him a solid foundation in phonics and then taught him to read with flashcards and Dick and Jane. Very old school, but it worked. Far better, in my opinion, than some of these newer methods. After Dick and Jane, he graduated to The Elephant and Piggy books by Mo Willems. Let me go back a little bit. I gave him a solid foundation in phonics and then taught him to read with flashcards and Dick and Jane. Very old school, but it worked. Far better, in my opinion, than some of these newer methods. After Dick and Jane, he graduated to The Elephant and Piggy books by Mo Willems. After Dick and Jane, he graduated to The Elephant and Piggy books by Mo Willems. Oh, how he loved those books. And they were great because not only do they make reading fun, they also introduce kids to reading with emotion. They also introduce kids to reading with emotion. One can't read Elephant and Piggy without varying the intonation of their voice. It just isn't possible. And no one read those books with more enthusiasm and excitement than Dad. Dad exaggerated every exclamation. No wonder my son enjoyed reading those books with his grandfather more than with anyone else. In the summer, he'd come out to the Mattucket house. In the summer, he'd come out to the Mattituck house, and Mom and Dad would take him to the library. He'd grab a stack of the Elephant and Piggy books, and every night before bed, he and Dad would read together. Always, my son took Piggy's lines, and Dad took Elephant's. Sometimes my son would even act out Piggy's part, hopping or jumping on the bed. One year for Dad's birthday, because they loved reading those books together, my son made Dad a picture of Elephant and Piggy. For Elephant's ears, he traced his hands, adding a bit of himself to the craft, as always. Above Elephant's head is a bubble that reads, "Piggy, what day is it?" The bubble above Piggy's head responds, "It's Grandpa's birthday." Daddy loved that picture. It might have been his favorite, because unlike the other works of art made by his grandson, he hung this one on his bedroom wall next to his bed. It's still there, and when I look at it, I can hear the two of them reading together. Thanks for the follow, Sadie. Day 54. Day 54, May 8th, 2020. Dad and I didn't always get along. There are things I did that angered him, and Dad's anger was never easy to endure. He had a temper that was quick to flare, and he was loud. When he yelled at me, I could feel my bones rattling inside my body. As a kid, I feared Dad's wrath. And maybe as I got older... And maybe as I got older, I never lost that need to please him. The summer before I started college, I totaled Dad's Buick. I asked him if I could borrow it to meet a friend at the movie theater in Greenport. He said yes, but then Mom realized she needed garlic for dinner. They told me I had to stop at the store first, get garlic, bring it home, and then I could go out to the movies. And then I could go to the movies. And then I could go to the movies. I didn't have the time to do it, so I drove faster than I should have. Fast enough that when the road turned sharply to the left, the car continued to go straight, and I flew headfirst into a telephone pole. Dad was fuming mad. So mad that he told me I'd never be able to drive his car again. A punishment that lasted until he died. Only on 2 occasions did he temporarily lift the ban. First, when Fireball developed a tumor on his heart, she needed to see a specialist, and Dad didn't want to take the day off of work if Mom and I could take her to the doctor. Needless to say, I was extremely nervous driving his car, but I got Fireball to and from the doctor safely. The second time was when Dad, Mom, and I went hiking. The second time was when Dad and Mom and I added words. The second time was when Dad, Mom, and I went hiking and geocaching in Greenport. We wandered off the path in search of a cache, and then Mom's knees started to hurt. Sharp pain shot through her body, making it difficult to walk. There was no way she was going to make it back to where we parked, so Dad gave me the keys and told me to get the car and rescue them. Of course, Dad eventually got over his anger. Not enough to revoke the punishment, but enough to laugh about the incident. He often made sarcastic comments about sending me to the store to buy garlic. He waved to the Elizabeth pole every time we passed it, and he eventually said, "That car gave me so much trouble, you really did me a favor." That was the last American-made car Dad ever bought. After that, he would only buy a Toyota. For years, he drove a Camry, but at some point, he switched to a RAV4. Then there was the time Dad, or maybe Mom, found a condom wrapper behind the couch in Mattatuck. It wasn't mine. I will swear to that even now. But Dad didn't believe me. He was furious. It took my boyfriend at the time to come and talk to him after to calm down. It took my boyfriend at the time to come and talk to him for him to calm down. I'm not sure I ever saw him so angry. So I suppose it's kind of ironic in the end that I had no interest in boys and no use for condoms. At all. After college, I went to Seoul, Korea to teach English for a year. When my contract expired, I traveled for 4 months, which included 7 weeks in India. While there, I got it into my head that I absolutely needed to get my nose pierced. I spent an entire day walking around. I need to check this pronunciation. Oh no, what happened? Don't do that. Just deleted everything for a second. That was helpful. Come on, you. Okay. JAISA.
J. Salmer.
J. Salmer. Let's see.
J. Salmer.
J. Salmer. Forbo. Walking around J Summer. While there, I got it into my head that I absolutely needed to get my nose pierced. I spent the entire day walking around J Selmer until I found a place that would do it. Weeks later, when I landed at Newark Airport, I rushed through customs and immigration, excited to see my parents. Daddy immediately noticed the ring in my nose, and he was not pleased. I hadn't seen him in 16 months, but when I went to hug him, he backed away. "What did you do to your nose?" he asked. He crossed his arms, fire in his eyes. He was that mad. Mad enough that he wouldn't hug me after a long absence. No, I'm not upset. Not anymore. He eventually got used to the nose ring, even if he never learns to like it, and there were many hugs in the years that followed. I hoped to go back to the beach, or to a different beach today. Sorry, I need to swallow. I hoped to go back to the beach, or to a different beach today, but it rained earlier than the forecast had predicted. So after my son completed his schoolwork, he spent much of the day working on a jigsaw puzzle he found in Nona's closet. Even when the rain stopped, it was cold and damp. Traffic. So after my son completed his schoolwork, he spent much of the day working on a jigsaw puzzle he found in Nona's closet. Even when the rain stopped, it was cold and damp. Not a beach day. Snapshot rewind. Summer 1979. Daddy snapped his Achilles tendon playing volleyball at a company picnic. Daddy snapped his Achilles tendon playing volleyball at a company picnic. The doctors were able to stitch the tendon back together. That time, the hospital stay was short. He was fixable, and he came home. But he had a cast on his leg that severely limited his mobility. For the rest of the summer, he didn't go to work. Since the injury happened at a company function, he was entitled to workman's comp. However, he couldn't drive, which meant we were stuck at home. No trips to the beach, no trips anywhere. The cast came off just before Labor Day, and even though Dad wasn't supposed to drive, he couldn't resist the urge to go to the beach. After a summer stuck in the city, we all wanted and needed a day at the ocean, so Dad took us to Jones Beach. When we got there and set up the blanket, I was so excited I couldn't wait to get in the water. I pulled off my shorts and shirt and didn't stop there. Caught up in my enthusiasm to get in the water, I tore off my bathing suit and ran naked down to the water. I was only 4 years old. My equipment making a noise. I was only 4 years old, but Dad was mortified. Day 55, May 9th, 2020. It's sunny but cold, and the wind is fierce. When I woke up, it felt like winter. I hadn't brought a coat home, but luckily in the closet, I found one of Dad's to wear on my morning walk. Still, the wind sliced through me. As I read, the pages kept getting swept out of my fingers. I'm reading The Blood of Olympus, which is the final book in Rick Riordan's I'm reading The Blood of Olympus, which is the final book in Rick Riordan's Heroes of Olympus series. It's not a book I ever would have thought. It's not a book I ever would have picked up on my own, but my son loved the Percy Jackson books. I had once told him I'd read any book he wanted me to read so that we could talk about it. As he completed the Percy Jackson books, he handed them to me, and slowly I found myself sucked into Jackson's world. Trying again. Talk about it. As he completed the Percy Jackson books, he handed them to me, and slowly I found myself sucked into Jackson's world. My son and I had some great conversations regarding the characters and their adventures, and I was surprised by how much Greek mythology we both learned. Anyway, he blew through the Percy books but stalled halfway through the Heroes books. I, however, couldn't leave the series unfinished, and after reading Pale Rider, I needed something light, something fun, something that didn't require much thought. Mostly, I needed an escape into a world where the good guys always win, where monsters are defeated, and death is frequently defied. I had to do laundry today because there is no dryer. But there is no dryer. That makes more sense. I had to do laundry today, but there is no dryer. In Mattituck, we have to dry clothes the old-fashioned way, by hanging them on the line. I only hope the wind doesn't steal them. My mother always hung laundry outside. Has always. My mother has always hung laundry outside, at both houses, even in the winter, when the cold cracks the skin on her hands. While hanging laundry, my son asked me if he could have While hanging laundry, my son asked me if he could have a Milky Way. In the freezer is a Ziploc bag of full-size Milky Ways. Every Halloween, my son went through his spoils, pulling out all the Milky Ways and setting them aside for Dad. He knew they were Grandpa's favorite. When we came out to Mattituck in early November to rake leaves, he brought the candy. With a smile, he held them out to Dad. But he always had one caveat before handing them over. "You'll share them with me, right, Grandpa?" he asked. Of course he did, which is why they are still in the freezer. Dad was waiting for my son to visit so they could eat them together. Now, my son will eat them alone. My son went over to the sound. Okay. My son and I went over to the sound to take a walk. The wind was sharp. I feared it might blow us into the water if we got too close. I'm not sure I've ever seen the sound as rough as it was that afternoon. This afternoon. I'm not sure I've ever seen the sound as rough as it was this afternoon. Ocean-sized waves crashed against the rocks, beat against the shore. Birds appeared to be flying backward as they battled their way through the wind. It's supposed to be spring, but the cold bit into my bones, making it feel like February. I wore Dad's jacket and I wore Dad's jacket and had rummaged, Come on, child. I wore Dad's jacket, and I had rummaged through Dad's hat box in search of a hat for my son. I found a woolen Looney Tunes hunting cap. Under different circumstances, he might have grumbled that he was too old for a hat with a picture of Porky Pig and Daffy Duck, but it was my dad's, so my son wore it with a smile. The wind stole 2 socks, or a neighbor took them. When I brought the laundry in, I noticed 2 of my son's socks missing from the line. When I brought I can make that more jokey, so might as well just go back. The wind stole 2 socks, or a neighbor took them. When I brought in the laundry, I noticed 2 of my son's socks missing from the line. A pair. I find it too much of a coincidence that a pair would blow away together. 2 random socks would be far more likely if it were an act of nature. What wind spirit intentionally seeks out matching socks? I went outside to barbecue burgers again, and it was snowing. It's May, and it was snowing. As if this year hasn't been messed up enough. Normally, snow would make me happy, and all day I've been looking forward to it, hoping it would hit us, but actually seeing it made me cry. It's one of those crazy quirks of life that I'd have loved. It's one of those crazy quirks of life that I'd have loved to call Dad to chat up. It's one of those crazy quirks of life that I'd have loved to call Dad up to chat about. A while ago, I wrote about Brian's father who was admitted into the hospital. He has COVID-19. At first, he had been showing signs of improvement. He had even been approved for the trial drug remdesivir. The family had been cautiously optimistic. But today, my friend messaged me to say that his dad's condition had gotten worse. The doctors said they could put him on a ventilator, but it would only keep his body alive. It would not save him. The family made the difficult decision to have him put on hospice instead. The family made the difficult decision. No, I don't like it. I don't like it. The family made the difficult decision to have him put in hospice instead. Like my dad, he is not going to recover. You know a disease is bad when it sweeps through an area, killing more than one person you know in less than a month's time. Brian had been in Boy Scouts with my brother years ago. Our dads knew each other, and the virus claimed them both. Who would have thought all those years ago, when we watched the New York Giants win the Super Bowl, that one day a plague would settle over New York City and kill them both? Kill both of them. Who would have thought all those years ago, when we watched the New York City Giants win the Super Bowl, that one day a plague would settle over New York City and kill both of them? And I turn on the news and I see people protesting because they don't want to wear masks, because they don't like being stuck at home, because they think the government is being oppressive. Well, this is the alternative. Watching people you love die, and then reliving it when it happens to another family you know. When my friend messaged me, I cried. I've been crying most of the day because I know exactly how it feels to have a parent die too soon. I'm crying for him. I'm crying for me. I'm still crying for my own dad. But I also have to admit that I'm jealous. All Greek heroes had a fatal flaw, and when my son started reading the Rick Riordan books, he asked me what mine would have been. I have many flaws, but jealousy is probably my worst. I'm jealous tonight because as crappy as it is to have a parent die, Brian at least got to say goodbye. In person. He got to tell his father that he loved him one final time. I'm a terrible person for feeling like this, but it still hurts me so much that I didn't get one final hug. I didn't get to tell my father I loved him. I just hung up the phone, and that was it. As I write, the death toll nears 80,000, and the rate of death doesn't show any sign of slowing down. States are opening up. People will continue to die because our federal government would rather dig graves than hand out more stimulus checks. Give your loved ones a hug. Tell them you love them. There's traffic. Tell them you love them. Give your loved ones a hug. Darn it. Give your loved ones a hug. Tell them you love them. And never walk away angry. Snapshot rewind, spring 1978. I didn't listen, and so it is my fault. I was 3 years old, and Daddy and I were roughhousing in the living room. After a while, Dad told me to stop, but I didn't. As he turned to sit up and reach for his glasses, I jumped over him. My foot hooked under his body, and I fell forward, smacking my left arm into the coffee table. The crunch of bone echoed through the room, and when Dad lifted my arm, it hung. Thanks for the love, Britt. It hung at a funky angle. I lost my spot. Lifted my arm. It hung unnaturally in a U shape. Both my radius and ulna snapped. Hearing the commotion, my mother ran into the room, and when she saw my arm, she burst into tears. They had to take me to the doctor, but they couldn't leave my infant brother home alone. In a panic, my mother called her parents, immigrants from Italy who spoke broken English. In the rushed conversation, partially in English and partially in Italian, something got lost in translation. My grandparents lived down the block and around the corner from us. Shortly after Mom hung up the phone, they arrived at our house frantic and breathless. Mom pulled open the door and Grandmother gasped, "What do you mean Elizabeth killed the baby?" I'm going to read through that last part. What do you mean Elizabeth killed the baby? Yeah, I don't know that I like that one much better either, but we'll see. We'll see. And that is the end of that hour. That's hour number 8. This book on the website said it would be 3 hours. I don't think they did it right. Well, actually, I know they did it wrong because they uploaded the wrong manuscript. But so it goes. And they yeah, just getting drinks. I'm taking my meds. I have about an hour and a half left in this book. And I just finished an hour, so it was a good time. All important things, yes. I have to set alarms because I forget to take my meds even when they're right in front of my face. Stolen hour 9. Yeah. It is a decent bit of recording time, but I'm glad that this book will be over today-ish. I dropped my pillow. And I didn't know it was going to be this long. Oops, that's not good. I'll just drop my interface and unplug my sound equipment, so that was great. Good work, Danielle. Anyway, the publisher uploaded a different book for the manuscript, and so the website that I get my information from tells me that this book is 3 hours long, and here we are going into hour 9. They emailed me the right manuscript, but I had to ask for it twice because they emailed me the wrong one again first. Sometimes it be like that. Actually, this is the first time that's happened, so sometimes it don't be like that. I might have to restart my computer so that it can re-recognize that I have my interface plugged in. Sometimes it's finicky. I can delete you. Are you studying again today? Or assignments? 'Tis dark. Ooh, that's a little rough. You going into nursing or doctoring? Yeah, I feel like it's hard to go into that and feel prepared no matter what you do. Thank you for paying me attention even when you have a lot on your own plate. Oh, nice. That's right. I think I saw that yesterday. Alrighty. Stolen hour 9. Open you. I've got to get my manuscript again. Yeah, that's true. People are mean. A lot of the times nurses are mean too, which is sad. I mostly know it from the patient side. I only know it from the patient side because I have never been in medicine, but I have been a patient advocate, and I was called NAZI adjacent for running a support group one time, and I was like, I don't understand how that works, but I'm done with you people now, thank you. So that was a fun experience. Sick people, not always thinking clearly, which I also know from experience, but yeah. I have had so many that have just been really dismissive, and when you're really sick and people are dismissive and not helpful, it's very hard, very hard. Yeah, I'm like, if you're just gonna be mean, why did you go into this field? Just saying. Maybe you're not a people person. There's jobs you can do at home. You could even do jobs in medicine that don't have to talk to people, like be a radiologist, and you can just sit in a dark room all day. It's fun. Other options. But I digress. Nurses are nicer than doctors for the most part, so. Day 56, May 10th, 2020. It's Mother's Day, though I suspect it is a sad and depressing day for many mothers this year. Yeah, and you know what's wild is, like, I have, I don't know if you've heard of this, but Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and a bunch of the comorbidities that come with it, and it's an understudied disease, and even though it impacts men and women statistically the same amount, in terms of diagnosis, women are the ones who tend to have worse impacts from it because estrogen messes things up more. But I've been symptomatic since birth, and I wasn't diagnosed until I was 27. And I was literally dying, and I came to the doctor with the packet of diagnostic information and the guidelines that you need. And he was like, no, it's too rare. You can't possibly have this. Refused to send me to the cardiologist, refused to refer me to somebody who would help, and told me I needed to lose weight. I had just had a baby and to stop breastfeeding. And then I would be fine. And neither of those things helped. And I did, in fact, need the referral to cardiology. And everything I told him was true. And I was just like, I'm tired of having to be my own doctor. And knowing more than these people who just look at me like I'm crazy. Ended up having neurosurgery 3 times in the following years. To fix the things that were wrong. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people who are in the psych field are hearing more about it because so many of us have PTSD from, and complex PTSD from experiences with interacting with medicine. Right? And they actually, like, teach that in med school. They, like, teach people that people are lying. And just like, why? Why would I want to not be able to take care of my kids and things like that? Like, not attention seeking. I didn't go to the doctor until I already knew what was wrong because I knew they wouldn't figure it out for me, you know? But it's fine. We do. I feel like women are like farmers. Like, you know, they have a saying that if a farmer goes into the ER, and especially if his wife made him know, like, grab the crash cart and just be ready because they're probably dying. Women are like the same. My cousin was a labor and delivery nurse, and she had really bad breast pain and kept going to get help, and in her own hospital that she worked in, and they just wrote her off, and they were like, it was mastitis, and she was like, I haven't breastfed in years, and they were like, oh, well, we'll just try the antibiotic anyway. It didn't work. And then they told her that it was hormonal, up until the point she woke up one day and her breast was giant and red and swollen and hard as a rock. And she, by the time they diagnosed her, she had stage 4 breast cancer, and it was, she's dead. They literally kill women, so makes me mad. Thanks for listening to me tell stories. No, they're not. They're overprescribed, and it's a problem. Thank you. I think somebody is mowing their lawn. It is not the time of year for lawn mowing. Why? Maybe I'm just hearing things. I'm going to try and record anyway, and if I have to redo it, then I have to redo it. Alrighty. With stay-at-home orders in place, people will be traveling less and not visiting their moms. Restaurants are closed, so people who usually go out to eat will have to stay in. And the recent deaths that have swept the country, the cloud of mourning will be hovering over many families, and with it is annoying. Also, if you need to mute me again, please feel free. I don't want to distract you. And with the recent deaths that have swept the country, the cloud of mourning will be hovering over many families. We are one of them. And while I woke up this morning, as I have for the last 26 days, missing Dad, I'm sure the day will be harder for Mom. This is the first Mother's Day in 45 years that she will not have Dad to celebrate her with her. This will be the first Mother's Day in 45 years that she will not have Dad to celebrate with her. Every year, at least in recent memory, he took her out to dinner. They couldn't always visit on Mother's Day. Sometimes we'd visit. We couldn't always visit on Mother's Day. We couldn't always visit on Mother's Day. Sometimes we'd visit the weekend before or the weekend after, but Daddy was always there to take her. Tripping. We couldn't always visit on Mother's Day. Sometimes we'd visit the weekend before or the weekend after, but Daddy was always there to take her out to dinner, to thank her for being a wonderful mother to his children. This year, I convinced my brother to be here for the day, so that Mom would at least have her children and grandchild with her. Yeah, there's so much systemic discrimination everywhere, and it's just wild. And you're right, and insurance makes it so much harder. Practicing medicine without a license. Yeah. You are right. And even if you can't do anything, just like saying, I don't know, is much better than assuming that the person is lying and gaslighting them. Alrighty, my son. Yep. Even with statistics, you know? Like, we know the outcomes. It's bad. Just turn your listening ears on. Yes, prescribing things we don't need. Insane. My son and I picked up bagels for breakfast and ate them at the beach before heading into the city to see Mom. The morning was cool, but not nearly as windy as yesterday. When we got to Mom's, my son was excited to see his uncle's dogs, two Cavalier King Charles Spaniels? I don't know dog types. No, it won't help them. It won't. Okay, thanks for the follow, Liv. Cavalier King Charles Spaniels. I'm just gonna make sure I'm saying that first right. Oh, those are cute dogs. Pronunciation.
Cavalier King Charles Spaniel.
Good news, I do know how to read. Cool. I'll be here when you're done being muting, probably. Have fun. Two Cavalier King Charles Spaniels. Petting and cuddling with them may have been the highlight of his day. My spouse drove in from New Jersey to spend the afternoon with us. Dad's absence hung heavily around us. It was very disorienting being in the house on a holiday without him, but I suppose we had a pleasant day, as pleasant a day. but I suppose we had as pleasant a day as we could possibly have. Mom and I took a walk with the dogs. My son joined us for a little while, but he quickly got bored and ran back to the house to watch Psycho. For dinner, my brother cooked delicious Persian food. I especially liked the squash over rice with a pomegranate sauce. After we started eating, I realized no one initiated a toast. Dad always toasted the moms on Mother's Day. So I raised my glass to Mom. "Happy Mother's Day," I said. But when my son raised his glass, he said, "A toast to Grandpa." I smiled and tears filled my eyes. Yes, to Grandpa. We all clinked our glasses. I am back in Long Island with my son. I didn't want to go back to New Jersey. I'm too unhappy in that condo, and with my son not physically attending school, there's no reason for me to be there. I asked my spouse to join us out here for the week so that we could. I asked my spouse to join us out here for the week so that we could all be together, but she'd rather be in Jersey. Be in New Jersey, put all the words in. But she'd rather be in New Jersey. She doesn't like it here. I don't like it there. I guess we need to find a different state to move to. Tomorrow, my brother is taking Mom up to Cape Cod for a week. I'm glad she decided to go with him. Getting away for a while will probably be good for her. She needs to heal emotionally, and it might be easier in a place that's not saturated with memories of Dad. Snapshot Rewind, 2010. My son calls his favorite restaurant the Cherry Place. It's his favorite restaurant because the owner always treated him like royalty when we go there for dinner. He calls it the Cherry Place because once the owner found out how much he likes maraschino cherries. I kind of fumbled a little bit in there. He calls it the Cherry Place because once the owner found out how much he likes maraschino cherries, she started bringing him a glass full of them every time she brought us our drinks. Its real name, when it was on the water, was the Meeting House Creek Inn. It was tucked into the creek, a beautiful, idyllic place to sit, eat, and sip cocktails. Then they had to move and found a new location in downtown Riverhead where they rebranded themselves as the Pulaski Street Grill. My son's name for them never changed. Often, Mom or Dad would take us to dinner there, mostly because they treated my son well. When my son learned how to write script, he liked pretending that he was paying for dinner. Dad would hand over his credit card, but then my son, who shared his name, would sign the receipt. It made him feel important, special. The first time Dad took my son to the Cherry Place, he was 4 months old. It was my spouse's and my first Mother's Day as moms. My son was too little to eat restaurant food, but his smile and friendly disposition warmed the owner. At one point, she asked if she could hold him, and she carried him over to the bar where, with her holding him up, his wiggly body... He wiggled his body. He wiggled his body and tapped his feet. Dad always enjoyed reminiscing about that first bar dance. When I think about it, I still hear Dad's laughter in my ear. Day 57, May 11th, 2020. 2020. Gotta keep it uniform. Thanks for the love. Day 57, May 11th, 2020. Brian's dad died yesterday, on Mother's Day. There were so many empty seats at dinner tables across the country. seats that should have been filled by people who were cut down by the virus. I've spoken about Brian rather abstractly. Perhaps I should share some of our history so that you can get to know him better. He and I were close in high school, but once I went off to college, I lost touch with everyone. However, years later, we reconnected on Facebook. Back in high school, he was a writer. But when we friended each other on Facebook, I can do better. But when we friended each other on Facebook, I learned that somewhere along the way, he traded in his pencil for a camera. Now he is a talented photographer. I've written about how I used to hate writing, that I found it oppressive and a waste of time. Oh, thank you, Nicole. Thanks for the follow. You might have, I think 26 books on Audible, so you might have heard me before. I'm not sure. All right, that I found it oppressive and a waste of time. Soon I will have more books on Audible. Are you an audiobook listener? Oh, thanks for the likes. I appreciate it. Okay, that I found it oppressive. I lost my spot. Yay! I do a lot of fantasy and romantasy stuff. I have a couple. This is my second memoir. So I do have some other stuff as well, but most of it is fantasy. And sapphic romance I have done a lot of. That I found it oppressive, and I still lost my spot. That's exciting. I feel like I haven't done so many yet that I'm getting people who recognize my voice, but it's fun to have it happen. Okay. That I found it oppressive and a waste of time, a tedious chore. It's Brian who changed that. One day when I was a junior in high school, that's how you read that sentence. One day when I was a junior in high school, Brian suggested I keep a notebook and jot down stories or poetry, anything that struck me as interesting. I don't remember what my initial response was, but by my senior year, I had a pink spiral notebook in which I jotted my first pieces of creative writing. I still have the notebook. The writing is dreadful, but Brian planted the seed of how writing could be fun. A way to express my emotions, and slowly, over the years, I've cultivated my skill. I sometimes wonder if I ever would have found my way to writing if Brian had not suggested a notebook all those years ago. If I hadn't, perhaps you wouldn't be kicking back and reading my words now. Is it too late, after nearly 30 years, to say thank you? And writing isn't the only skill I have to thank him for. One of my favorite memories of our friendship is the night he invited me to stay for dinner, and his parents ordered Chinese food. As he ripped open the bag and pulled out the food, he gave me a sly smile. With a glint in his eyes, he said, "You can eat as much as you want, but you have to eat with pencils." Then he handed me a pair of chopsticks and proceeded to show me how to use them. I think of him every time I eat East Asian food. As I've mentioned, I knew him through the Boy Scouts. His dad, my dad, and another father were quite close, the Three Musketeers. Not only did they joke around and have fun on Boy Scout outings, they also did things together outside of Boy Scouts. They and their spouses went to dances and dinners. We went to barbecues and other events. But then something... Sorry, there's traffic. Okay, they and their wives. They and their spouses. They and their spouses went to dances and dinners. We went to barbecues and other events. But then something happened around the time I left for college. I'm not sure what. Dad never really seemed to know either. But he had fallen from the fold and no longer hung out with the other families. It made him sad, and he often looked back on those good times they shared rather wistfully, wishing the friendships had continued. Boy Scouts was my brother's thing. It's really his story to tell, but I am the sentimental one, the storyteller, the one who feels compelled to write about Dad. And Dad's story would be incomplete without at least a blurb or two dedicated to the Scouts, since he really valued the time he got to spend with my brother. Every month, the Scouts went camping. If Dad didn't go on every camping trip, he went on some of them, and he hated it. Or so he said. I remember him coming home from camping trips smelling like campfire and complaining about the cold, the rain, the miserable sleeping conditions, the loud snores that kept him awake. However, as he got older, he spoke more fondly, more nostalgically about the trips. I'm not sure if time had allowed him to romanticize his experiences, or if he just exaggerated his discontent in the moment because it made for a better story. Either way, I know he didn't enjoy camping for the sake of sleeping in the woods. He did it because he felt it was a way to connect with my brother. Despite his lack of enthusiasm for camping, there were 2 campsites that Dad really liked. His favorite was Treasure Island. I think that's what it was called. But obviously I can't call him up to confirm it. It was on an island in the Delaware River. And other than Dad saying everyone had a fantastic time there, I don't remember the specifics of why he liked it. He also very much enjoyed Baiting Hollow, which is on Long Island and about 20 minutes drive west of the Metucket house, Mattituck. Which is on Long Island and about a 20-minute drive west of the Mattituck house. After my son's Tiger year, Tiger, not Tigger, geez, there's no double G. After my son's Tiger year, first year of Cub Scouts, we sent him to a day camp in Watchung Reservation, not too far from where we live. Other Scout parents had raved about it, and so we thought it might be fun, not a fun. And so we thought it might be fun for our son. He liked it, but he didn't love it. When he spoke about it, his voice was void of enthusiasm. But during his wolf year, second year, he asked if he could go back. I liked the idea of summer camp, but I wanted something better, something with a lake, a more traditional type of camp, the kind you see on television and in the movies. I set out to do some research. There were other camps in Jersey, but they were all an hour or more away, and in rush hour traffic, driving was not an appealing option. Then I remembered Baiting Hollow and how Dad raved about it all those years ago. I Googled the map, and sure enough, they had a summer program for Cub Scouts. That spring, when we went out to Mattituck for Easter, I told Dad that I was thinking about sending my son to camp at Baiting Hollow. Dad was oh so very excited. Not only did he insist on paying for it, yet another gift for his grandson, he had us all pile into the car and we drove down to the campground. He wanted his grandson to see it, and his enthusiasm was infectious. When we arrived, we met one of the scoutmasters who ran the camp. He was the only one there, but he too got caught up in Dad's excitement and he took us on a tour. As he showed us around, Dad reminisced about being there with my brother. It was as if he had momentarily traveled back in time, revisiting moments that brought him a great deal of pleasure. Since the camp was too far away for me to attend the parent orientation in June, my parents went in my place. I think Dad actually enjoyed going. Another trip down memory lane. When they asked who his child was and he told them, the woman running the orientation asked, "But if he lives in Jersey, how will he get here every day?" Dad, being Dad, responded, "You mean there isn't a bus?" It took the woman a moment to realize Dad was joking, but when she did, she laughed. Dad explained that while his grandson lived in New Jersey, he'd be staying in... Dad explained that while his grandson lived in New Jersey, he'd be staying in Long Island during the week of camp. 2 weeks later, my son insisted that Dad take him to his first day of camp, so the three of us went. I'm not sure who was more excited, Dad or my son. Of course, Dad also came with me to pick up my son. Or rather, I went with Dad, since he drove. The minute my son saw us, he came sprinting toward us, waving, not raving. The minute my son saw us, he came sprinting toward us, waving his arm, which spotted a blue bracelet. Sported. Jeez, come on. Which sported a blue bracelet. "I passed," he said. "I passed my swimming test." That meant he got to swim in the deep end. Dad hugged him. "Congratulations, that's great," he said. Dad then told us about when he'd spent a week during the summer with my brother at Yagug Scout Camp. Well, I need to check that pronunciation. Yagug. Okay. I-A-W-G-O-G. Pronunciation. Yagoo. Final G is dropped.
Yagoo Pond.
Okay. Dad then told us. Dad then told us about when he spent a week during the summer with my brother at Yagoo Scout Camp in Rhode Island. They also had to take swimming. Let's put a different emphasis. They also had to take swimming tests. Even all those years later, Dad was still proud of the fact that he and my brother had both passed. "We were the only ones in the troop," he said with a smile. My son enjoyed camp so much that he asked if he could please go to the sleepaway camp the following year. Of course, my spouse and I said yes, and once again, Dad insisted on paying for it. When we tried to object, he said, "But I want to do this. Please let me do it for him." Sleepaway camp proved to be even more fun than day camp. When we picked up my son at the end of his stay, he asked me if I would please buy him the pocket knife that he really liked, one with wolves on the handle, in the gift shop. Before I could answer, Dad pulled out his wallet, although he did ask me if it was okay before he handed over the cash. In the car, the two of them were already talking about next year. Dad promised to send him to camp again since he had so much fun. None of us had a clue that Dad would not live to see another summer. Now, my son is searching for every possible way to hold on to his grandfather. I think that's why he wants to play baseball. Yesterday, when we were in Queens, he unearthed my first baseball glove. He decided he needed to keep it, despite having his own glove at home, so he brought it to Long Island. After completing his schoolwork today, he wanted to play catch. Great idea, except my glove is also at home. But I did a little rummaging around, and found Dad's glove. The glove he had as a kid. The glove he spent countless hours wearing when we played catch together. The glove he spent countless hours wearing when we played catch together. The leather is torn and cracked, but the webbing is intact and the pocket is well formed. I smiled and slipped my hand into it and went out to play with my son. Snapshot rewind. 1989. Dad was a jokester. He liked to laugh and have fun. My brother's scoutmaster was strict. His rules were gospel, and he didn't take kindly to people flouting them. His name was Mr. Blight, though Dad often referred to him as Captain Blah, a reference to the Blight. Okay. Let's double check pronunciation. Because I thought that was a joke, but I don't think it is in context.
Blay.
Okay, Blay. That is good. And then Bly.
What if you could clean your retainer at the touch of a button? No more brushing or tablets. Over 4 years ago, our team of
Bly.
Okay.
Bly.
You can be quiet now. Please. Thank you. Let me just go back a second because I have forgotten.
Blay.
Okay, yeah. Blay and Bly. Okay. But Dad called him Mr. Bly. Though Dad often referred to him as Captain Bly, a reference to the British naval officer most famously known for the mutiny that occurred aboard his ship, the HMS Bounty. One year, for the father and son spring trip, the Scouts went to Hershey Park in Pennsylvania. On the bus, Dad and his two friends, the Three Musketeers, passed the time singing. The noise irked the Scoutmaster. He told them to be quiet. They sang louder. To silence them, he threw a block of wood at them. They increased their volume further. By the time they reached the park, the Scoutmaster was boiling with frustration. He reprimanded them. In response, to provoke him further, they posed as the 3 wise monkeys. My dad covered his eyes, Brian's dad covered his ears, and the third father covered his mouth. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. Yes, they definitely shared some good times and had some happy memories. I guess that's what life is about. Enjoying moments when you can and collecting stories to look back on. Stories that still, after decades, have passed. To look back on. Stories that still, after decades have passed, make you smile. Day 58. Day 58, May 12th, 2020. Dad died 4 weeks ago. Damn. 4 weeks without Dad. And the days will only stretch out further with me missing him more. As states begin to relax restrictions and Trump pushes America to open up, Dr. Fauci, the one sane voice of reason on the coronavirus task force, is going to testify today before the Senate to warn that opening too quickly will lead to more suffering and death. I seriously don't understand why anyone would choose money over life, cash over love. Maybe they are incapable of love. Or they think this can't happen to them or anyone they care about. The Republican Party has labeled itself the Christian Party, the moral party, the pro-life party. Well, it's hard to think of them as pro-life anymore. Not when the leader of their party is responsible for 82,000 American deaths. A new projection has the death toll rising to 147,000 by early August. Sorry, I need to do that again because I needed to swallow. A new projection has the death toll rising to, mouth noise. A new projection has the death toll rising to 147,000 by early August. That's up 10,000 from yesterday. I don't think the Republican Party should continue branding themselves as Christian and capitalistic. If nothing else, the crisis arising from the pandemic is demonstrating that Christian values, genuine Christian values, are not compatible with capitalistic ones. You can't exploit people and protect them at the same time. For school, my son had to write another poem. I haven't been able to get him to write any prose since Dad got sick, but he appears to be using poetry as a way to process his grief. The door. There was a door on the 2nd floor, covered in dust and rust. It had a hole big enough for a soul, but on the other side, you would need a guide to get out without a shout. A car went by, so I think I'm gonna redo that. The door. There was a door on the 2nd floor, covered in dust and rust. It had a hole big enough for a soul, but on the other side, you would need a guide to get out without a shout. My spouse and I decided that if the school does not resume in-person classes come September, I will homeschool our son. It was the plan for this year. We even had the principal send us the withdrawal forms, but they arrived in my inbox the same day Dad got sick. With Dad dying, I just didn't have the headspace to be a full-time teacher. Some days, I still feel like I'm in a fog. Some days, I'm not sure I can be a good parent without Dad around to offer me advice. Though, when I didn't listen to him, I guess things still turned out okay, like with the balance bike. I first learned about their existence when my son was in a stroller. I was taking him for a walk in the park and I saw a kid on one. Shaking my head at the oddity of it, I asked his mother where the pedals were. She laughed, explaining that balance bikes were a new fad out of Europe. The hardest part of learning to ride a bike is the balance. So, I scrolled and lost my spot. I am not 100% sure. I should finish recording it today, and then I will turn it in, and the author or the publisher for this one will give it a listen and see if I need to make any changes, or if I pronounced anything wrong. And if there are no changes that need to be made, they can say that they approve it, and then it takes 10-ish days to become available on Audible. But if corrections do need to be made, then there's 2 rounds, and each round can take 10 days. And then once it's approved, it'll take another 10 days. So it could be in a week and a half, or it could be in a month. Oh, I'm glad that you were able to get into it. It is a sad one, but it's a good one. All right, the hardest part. Yeah. I have had a number of people stopping in to listen for just a couple of minutes and saying they like hearing me narrate, but the book is too much. But living it is a lot harder than listening. Okay, the hardest part of learning to ride a bike. The hardest part of learning to ride a bike is the balance. So the idea was to teach kids balance before teaching them how to pedal. I was intrigued so much that for Christmas, the week before my son turned 3, my spouse and I gave him a balance bike. Dad ridiculed me, calling me a snob because I thought something European might be better than something American, but I didn't let him deter me. By October, my son was riding a 2-wheeler, and the fact that his grandson could ride a bike before he turned 4 impressed Dad enough that he finally conceded. It was a good idea. You did good. I'm glad you didn't listen to me. Snapshot rewind. Late 1970s. Daddy always loved the water. Before my parents rented or bought the house in Long Island, we spent many summer days at Jones Beach. Sorry, needing to swallow again. I'm gonna choke on my own spit. Sometimes we'd go early and spend all day. Sometimes we'd leave the house a little later. Mom would make lemon chicken for dinner, pack it up for a picnic, and we'd stay at the beach long after most other people had left. The beach in the evening, after the crowds dissipated, was always the most enjoyable time to be there. It's been years since I've eaten Mom's lemon chicken. It might even be years since she made it. But sometimes when I'm at the ocean with my family, after the lifeguards have packed up and the sun hangs low in the sky, I swear there are moments when I can smell the lemony scent of it in the air. That was the end, so I'm gonna put a button on that. I swear, there are moments when I can smell the lemony scent of it in the air. Alrighty. That one was very short. Day 59, May 13th, 2020. In May of 2017, fumble. In May of 2017, more than 100 years, after more than 100 years, geez Louise. In May of 2017, after more than 100 years, the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus closed. I was visiting my parents in February of that year when we heard on the news that the circus would be coming to an end. Dad didn't hesitate. He immediately went online to book tickets for all of us, my son, my spouse, me, Mom, and himself, to go. The circus was too big of a deal to miss. An era was drawing to a close, and Dad wanted to be sure that his grandson got to experience it before it was no more. We had a fantastic day. Mom and Dad bought us. Mom and Dad bought us all clown noses to wear, and of course, Dad bought my son the souvenir of his choice, a plastic sword that cost way more than it was worth. It was a fun afternoon. My son started the day in a bad mood, but the excitement of the tigers, the clowns, the acrobats eventually captivated him and cheered him up. He was always happy to spend a day with his grandfather. After the circus, Dad took us out for ice cream at Eddie's Sweet Shop, our favorite ice cream place in Queens. The lawn needed to be mowed. Dad always did it. Now, the duty falls to me. For the first time ever, I used a lawnmower. Living in a condo, yard work isn't necessary, and Dad never wanted me to do it here. Raking leaves, yes. Mowing the lawn? No. Bleh. I've no idea why. The hardest part was the noise. I don't do well with motors. The noise causes me physical pain. But I managed to get through it by stopping frequently. My son came out to help. He was excited to use the mower, but he pushed it back and forth about 3 times, and he was done. The novelty quickly wore off. The television was more fun. 2 falls ago, when I came out here to rake leaves for Dad, I signed my son up for a half-day shooting event at Baiting Hollow Scout Camp. My son loves shooting activities, BB guns and archery. So I thought it would be fun. A fun activity for him. I told Dad to go with my son. Every year I do many scouting activities with him. I thought he would enjoy being with his grandfather for a change. After all, he always liked saying, "the boys with the boys," when he was with Grandpa. After all, he always liked saying, "the boys with the boys," when he was with Grandpa. Dad wanted me to go too, but there were lots of leaves to pick up. It was. Dad wanted me to go too, but there were lots of leaves to pick up. It was, after all, the reason I had gone out. Darn it. It was, after all, the reason I had gone out to Mattituck to begin with. Besides, 2 adults would have been too much. I didn't want my son to feel smothered. As I expected, Dad had a great time. He enjoyed watching his grandson shoot, and my son was thrilled to spend the day with Grandpa. My son, who hates Zoom calls and the whole concept of talking to any adult, not including moms or grandparents, via video chat, asked me if he could please FaceTime with my friend Bonnie in Washington. I was shocked, but when I told Bonnie that he wanted to speak with her, she was happy to talk to him. This evening, she called after she finished with work. As expected, my son was shy at first. He wanted me to sit with him and point the camera only on me, but he warmed up and soon... Dad was on the bed watching some sporting event on television, and cuddled next to him was Fireball. So much for the rules. Apparently, when it came to Fireball, they no longer applied. Alrighty. Day 60. Day 60, May 14th, 2020. Mom and Dad got married on September 18th, 1971. Their wedding song was "We've Only Just Begun" by the Carpenters. I was born 3 years later, on September 11th. My birthday is now a national day of mourning. Remember when the deaths of 3,000 Americans in one day was cause for anger and outrage? We went to war over it. But I guess it's only a problem for Middle America when the deaths are caused by Muslim terrorists. Hold on. Please hold. We can do that better. But I guess it's only a problem for Middle America when the deaths are caused by Muslim terrorists. When our own president shrugs off the death of 3 deaths. When our own president... When our own president shrugs off the deaths of 3,000 Americans in one day, times many days, and claims it's the price to pay in order to rescue our economy, his supporters applaud him. They embrace the death of our elderly as a way to make America great again. And I came home from the hospital on their anniversary. Okay, that was a long segue. Hi, Megan, thank you. Oh, my heart me dance. Hi. If you guys are fans of romantasy and fantasy, Megan is one of my authors who I'll be narrating later this year, next year, early next year. So give her a follow. And I came home from the hospital on their anniversary. As a kid, I always joked that I was their best anniversary present. Now, as a mom, I realize I was probably right. Last September, things were mentally and emotionally bad for me. The last thing I wanted was to start another school year living in my condo. It is a toxic environment that exacerbates everything else that feels wrong in my life. My mental state was crumbling. I was depressed and anxious and miserable. The morning of my birthday, I felt even worse. Another year older, and nothing to show for it. I wasn't anywhere near. Also, Megan, if you're still here, I'm sorry I missed your live earlier, but I was also live and narrating. So, I've been trying to go on every day around 10:30, and today I just had to hop off for a minute because the school was calling. It was the nurse, not the principal, in case you're wondering. Okay, it wasn't anywhere near. I wasn't anywhere near. That's why I'm redoing it. Here we go. I wasn't anywhere near where I had once hoped to be at that point in my life. A series of dead ends and failures had me feeling. Oh, all right. Need some water, maybe, to get my head in the game. Okay, another year older and nothing to show for it. Got it. I wasn't anywhere near where I had once hoped to be at that point in my life. A series of dead ends and failures had me feeling completely hopeless. That morning, when my parents called to wish me a happy birthday and to FaceTime with my son, they could hear the anguish in my voice. It worried them. They got into the car and Dad drove to New Jersey to surprise me. The moment Dad walked through the door and pulled me into a hug, I felt as if I had been pulled from a lake after treading water for hours. Just having him there made everything better. He told me to pick a place for lunch and he would take me out, but I said we had to pick up my son first. If he knew his grandparents had visited and he didn't get to see them, he would be angry. I didn't think Dad expected me to pull him out of school, but the moment I suggested it, his eyes lit up and he smiled. "Okay, let's do it," he said. We went to a hibachi restaurant in Somerville. The food was good. The company, even better. We laughed together and ate way too much. By the time Mom and Dad brought me back home, I was smiling. Sorry, I needed to swallow. Daddy died a month ago. I still cry every day. Sometimes I wake up crying. Bleh. Sometimes I wake up crying because the pain of missing him is great. Since he died, thousands more have joined him. As of today, 86,000 Americans have died from the virus, but medical experts think the numbers are even higher. Of course, you have the Trump supporters and people pissed off about being stuck at home who are claiming the death toll is actually much lower. In Wisconsin, the state Supreme Court overturned the Democratic governor's stay-at-home order, declaring that it was unlawful. Republicans in the legislature filed the lawsuit, claiming that the stay-at-home order would be bad for business. Companies would suffer. People would lose their jobs. What will they say when people start dying? You also have Republicans pushing for schools to open up in the fall. Rand Paul claims that the mortality rate among kids is so low that it would be foolish to keep schools closed. What about teachers? Some of them are in the vulnerable age group. Asymptomatic kids can infect other family members. But what concerns me most is the fact that kids are now falling ill from a COVID-related inflammatory illness. Here we go. Okay, I made a funky nose noise. Age group. Asymptomatic kids. Oh, I cut that off. Hold on. Please hold. Some of them are in the vulnerable age group. Asymptomatic kids can infect other family members. What concerns me? Fudge. But what concerns me most is the fact that kids are now falling ill from a COVID-related inflammatory illness. While most cases, not surprisingly, are in New York, 17 states have reported sick children. Sorry, there's noise outside. Sounds like there's a tractor going. I can't talk normally or read normally. Great. 17, okay. Here we go. While most cases, not surprisingly, are in New York, 17 states have reported sick children. 3 children in New York have died. I'm having a hard time processing Dad's untimely death. I can't fathom what the parents of those children are going through. As my son and I kicked back on the beach this afternoon, eyes closed, listening to the rhythmic rippling of the water, I realized that I won't be able to move forward unless I let go of things that I can't control. Let go of the things. I realized that I won't be able to move forward unless I let go of the things that I can't control. I need to let go of Mom's pain and my son's sorrow. Trying to absorb it isn't helping them. It's wearing me down and making it more difficult to support them in other ways. My own pain is heavy enough. I need to let go of regret. I will never have that final morning with Dad back again. I can't go back and give him one last hug. I can only hope that in the end he knew I loved him. I also need to let go of all my future plans with Dad. My wishes and expectations for things we'd do and places we'd go. Holding on to them, thinking continuously of all the things he will miss, won't help me. Thinking of the things he wanted to be present for, the things he wanted to be able to do for my son, won't bring him back. It will only make living without him harder. I need to let go of the what-ifs. They don't matter anymore. Replaying them only makes me sadder. What I won't let go of is my anger at Trump and the federal government for their failed response to this pandemic. A strong, solid, moral leader would not have. A strong, solid, moral leader would not have been able to avert every death, but he or she wouldn't have ignored the intel. A good leader would have acted quickly and decisively. A compassionate leader might have saved Dad. A responsible president wouldn't have fed the American people a stream of continued lies. And an ethical president wouldn't put lives before money. I won't let go of my anger because there is a lesson to be learned, one to pass on to my son. Being politically conscious and aware is important. When a nation follows a false god, people die. It has happened before. It will happen again. I also won't let go of the memories. The good times I had with Dad. The special moments he and my son shared. These I will hold on to tightly, and maybe someday I can remember them without tears. Tonight, when my son was once again making chocolate ice cream sodas, I offered to help. He looked at me sideways with a lopsided smile and said, "I am the sole heir of Grandpa's ice cream sodas. No one is allowed to make them but me." Snapshot rewind. My voice gave out a little bit. Snapshot rewind. May 14th, 2005. Today is the 15th anniversary of my wedding reception. Yes, my wedding and my reception did not occur on the same day. 15 years ago, we weren't legally permitted. I can enunciate better than that. 15 years ago, we weren't legally permitted to get married in our own country, so we traveled to Canada. However, my spouse wanted a traditional reception. Ugh. Sorry, I was burping. And squawking. However, my spouse wanted a traditional reception, so we celebrated the month after we got married. Usually, the bride dances with her father and the groom his mother. Since we were both brides, we thought it would be silly to have two daddy-daughter dances, which meant we had to agree on one song. My spouse and I rarely agree on anything. I didn't like any of the songs she picked. She didn't care for the one I liked, but to avoid a standstill, she gave in. We danced with our fathers to Bette Midler singing "The Wind Beneath My Wings." Since we didn't have a wedding party, a best man, I asked Dad if he could give the toast. He was happy to do so. Mom said she worked hard on the speech, wanting to get it just right. He worked hard on the speech. Mom said he worked hard on the speech, wanting to get it just right. I wish I had saved his speech the way I had saved his notes when he came up to my school. Hold on. Okay. I wish I had saved his speech the way I had saved his notes when he came up to school to talk to my son's class. But I didn't. Anyway, when he held up his glass to toast me and my spouse, I was happy. We were all smiling. The world seemed perfect. Ooh, I went faster than I expected. This is exciting. Epilogue. Epilogue, June 2021. On day 5, I wrote, "I have no idea what will greet us at the other end of this pandemic. Life won't be the same. I may or may not have a job. I may or may not be able to move. I may or may not get a break with my writing. But I'll have my family, hopefully, and I'll have my wine. I'll take it." As you know, I don't have my family. Not everyone. This pandemic stole my father. It fractured my family. Not wanting to send our child to school in the midst of a pandemic, my spouse and I decided to homeschool him. He hated getting on camera, and while the virtual model was great for keeping people safe, it was not as effective as in-person learning. So we scrapped real school for the year, and I immersed my son in a rigorous humanities program. We spent most of the first semester living in Mattituck, just the two of us, removed from the rest of the world. It was blissful. If Dad had survived, it might have been perfect. Around Christmas, we returned to New Jersey so that we could pack and finally move out of the condo. Being a full-time teacher for my son left me with little time to do much else. I couldn't earn a living. Not that anyone was hiring anyway. By the time my son went to bed at night, I was tired, but I attempted to keep writing. I tried to revise my unpublished novel about a genderqueer teen who is suicidal due to her mother's intense Christian beliefs, but I ended up getting frustrated by the fact that it didn't seem to be going anywhere. After 8 months, I filed it away in a digital folder. Maybe someday I'll return to it. However, I did complete several essays, all of them about Dad, about missing him. Literary magazines, both online and print, published a few of them. Minor successes. Sorry, swallowing. In the early days of my blog, ooh, that was too essy. In the early days of my blog, I wrote favorably about Governor Cuomo. While I still believe he acted very much like a leader should, scandals have tarnished his reputation. But by now, they have been rehashed so frequently in the news, It would be redundant to write further about them here. Also, I should note, Trump lost his bid for re-election. People came out in record numbers to vote for Biden. The message was clear. Americans had had enough of Trump's lies, his inhumanity, his stupidity. So, Sadly, though, memories are short. 4 years later, in 2024, Trump was re-elected. My friend Brian, in an attempt to grapple with his father's death, turns to advocacy. He worked tirelessly with various organizations to ensure that the victims of COVID will be remembered. Mom finally sold Dad's car on Labor Day weekend 2020. While we were busy inside dealing with the car salesman, my son went missing. I found him in the lot, sitting in the driver's seat of Dad's car, his hand resting on the steering wheel, and an intense look of sorrow etched on his face. The following year, Mom sold the Mattituck house. She doesn't drive and couldn't get out there without me. I would have loved to have gone there more frequently, but once the world opened up, it wasn't possible. I still cry when I think about it. I had 30 years of memories tied up in those walls. It was my happy place, the one place in the world I always felt safe. And now it's gone. My son also misses it. In February of 2021, after a 25-year journey, I finally earned my black belt in Taekwondo. It was a bittersweet moment. Of course, I was ecstatic to have attained my goal, but it was my first achievement in a world without Dad. I so desperately wanted him to be there watching me test. I wanted so badly to call him up and tell him that I did it. Instead, I cried because he wasn't there, because I will never again hear him say "very nice" with an accomplished when I accomplish. Mouth click. Because I will never again hear him say "very nice" when I accomplish something. I wonder often, did anyone else on that Viking cruise get sick? Did anyone else die? There's traffic. Did anyone else die? We only hear about the cases on the cruises that captured media attention. But what about the cruise that killed my father? I wanted to hold them responsible. A healthy man goes on vacation and comes home infected with a deadly virus. That's not acceptable. What did the staff know that they refused to share with the passengers? My guess is that somewhere along the line, they started hiding the truth. I wanted my mother to sue them, but the entire process seemed too daunting, so she opted not to follow through. On April 14th, the 1-year anniversary of Dad's death, we finally had a funeral and memorial mass for him. My son and I both wrote a eulogy. He did a better job delivering his. I sobbed throughout my entire reading. A few weeks after the memorial mass, I got my first tattoo. Missing Dad saying, "Very nice." Missing Dad saying, "Very nice." I had the words in his handwriting tattooed on my left inner wrist. At the time of writing this epilogue, COVID has killed 618,258 Americans. The world is beginning to open up, and people are talking about a return to normalcy. But let me be completely clear. For me and the families of those who died, Life will never return to normal. We will never be able to reclaim our pre-COVID lives. My dad was such a big part of my life and my son's life that we are still trying to find our way in a world without him. If there was anything even close to normal in our lives right now, we'd be getting ready to spend the weekend with him for Father's Day. But he is gone forever. So I will leave you with one final story. It took 6 months, but my son finally returns to Taekwondo via Zoom. And when in-person classes resumed with low capacity limits, he excitedly started attending class again. He even participated in several virtual tournaments. In February 2020, my son competed in a tournament in Pennsylvania, out in Pennsylvania. Darn it. In February 2020, my son competed in a tournament out of Pennsylvania. Fuck. In February 2020, my son competed in a tournament out in Pennsylvania. Mom and Dad were getting ready for their cruise through Patagonia, and they didn't want to go to a crowded venue that might be crawling with germs. Dad didn't want to get sick before he left because that might have ruined his trip. He had no idea that there would be worse germs on the boat. He had no idea that there would be worse germs on the boat. Germs that would not only ruin his trip, but end his life. Anyway, the day of the tournament, Dad texted my son on his tablet, "Good luck, pal. I'll be with you in spirit." None of us had a clue how foreshadowing those words would be. Less than a month later, the world shut down, and the rest of the tournament season was canceled. As a result, the 2020 district tournaments were postponed until June 2021. To compete in districts, you need to qualify, and my son did. And my son did so in 3 events: traditional forms, weapons, and sparring. The Northeast District Tournament was held in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. In the morning, the day of the event, the boys in my son's ring gathered on the mat, and I started to feel increasingly worried, nervous. So many of the competitors wore uniforms that said State Champion. Whoa. Come on, girlfriend. So many of the competitors wore uniforms that said State Champion or District Champion on their backs. The competition would be fierce, the toughest my son had ever faced. My fear was that he wouldn't do well and that a finish toward the bottom of the pack would discourage him. It's not that I didn't think he was good, but seeing so many champions made me wonder if they might all be better. I should have had more faith in my son. Even though my son was nervous, Even though my son said he was nervous, he looked completely calm on the mat. For traditional forms, the judges called him to perform second. There was a time he didn't do all that well if he was in the first 3 to perform. The way it works is 3 competitors do their form, and then the judges call the 3 of them up to give them their scores one at a time. Fudge. Okay. The way it works is 3 competitors do their form, and then the judges call the 3 of them up to give their scores one at a time. After that, each person gets their score immediately after they perform. The forms look much like a dance, rhythmic and graceful. But if you watch closely, you can also see how deadly some of the moves could be if used in a fight. Overall, my son's form looked crisp and strong, perhaps one of his best performances. When the first 3 boys were given their scores, my son and the boy who went after him tied. I began to hope that my son might actually place. Throughout the course of the competition, only 1 boy scored better. At the end, there was a 3-way tie for second. The 3 boys who had to do their form again. Threw in an extra word there. The 3 boys had to do their form again. I was terribly nervous, but my son did amazing, and the judges agreed. He ended up in 2nd place. In weapons, my son also did well. Usually, the kids who do nunchucks or staff score higher, but my son placed 2nd with his Osungdu. Let me check the pronunciation of that. Osungdu. Pronunciation.
Songdo. Osing.
Try something different. Let's go to 4-bow. Okay. That's a bummer. I can't find the pronunciation. Are either of you martial arts people? I'll leave that how it is for now. And if the author gets back to me, then we will change it. Less than a month, Osungdu. The one-handed sword, okay. The one-handed sword. 2 medals. Not bad. As for sparring, he lost the first round. But while he's been working hard on his forms all year, he hasn't sparred much. The pandemic hasn't allowed it. There is no doubt. Dad was definitely with my son in spirit, which gives me hope that maybe he is still with me as well. Okay. Let me close out that. Thanks for the love. Hi, Katie B. And stolen recipes. This will be our 10. Recipes. Food was important to Dad. It was a way to spoil his family, especially his grandson. Throughout my memoir, I wrote about Dad's connection to certain foods and my memories of them. So that you may remember my dad and our story, I want to leave you with a few of his favorite recipes. Waffles. The imprecise measurements are part of the charm. First, you need 2 cups of flour, less than 1 tablespoon of salt, a good teaspoon of baking powder, 1 heaping teaspoon of sugar, a little less than 3 cups of milk. Actually, I should go back and... Okay. I'll pause here so you can grab some paper and a pen. Waffles. The imprecise measurements are part of the charm. First, you need 2 cups of flour, less than 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 good teaspoon of baking powder, 1 heaping teaspoon of sugar, a little less than 3 cups milk, 2 or 3 eggs, 5 tablespoons melted sweet butter, First, mix dry ingredients together. Add milk to dry ingredients 1 cup at a time. Mix with a whisk between cups. Add butter. Whisk until the batter is smooth. Pour batter into waffle iron and follow waffle iron directions. I need to scroll. Okay, that is the end of that recipe. In case you're wondering, you wait 5 seconds in between each ingredient or instruction because that is about the amount of time it takes to pause the audio and restart it so that somebody can write something down. Chocolate cream soda. 1. In a tall glass, add about 1.5 inches of You Bet chocolate sauce. 2. Add roughly 1/4 cup of milk. Whole milk works best. Stir until the milk is chocolatey. Sorry, cars are going past. Okay, also the format for this one is different than the first one, but I want to keep them uniform, so... Sorry, my throat is making noises. Okay. Chocolate ice cream soda. First, take a tall glass, add about 1.5 inches of You Bet chocolate sauce. Add roughly 1/4 cup of milk. Whole milk works best. Stir until milk is chocolatey. . Add cold seltzer, letting it get frothy on top. Stir. Add a large scoop of chocolate ice cream. Dad's preference was Haagen-Dazs. Crumb cake. For the cake batter, you will need 1.5 cups flour, 1/2 cup sugar, 3/4 cup of milk, 1 egg, sorry, I need to swallow, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon vanilla extract. Ooh, traffic. Living on the highway when you're an audiobook narrator don't always go together. But it's okay. Everything's gonna be fine. Vanilla, 1/2 teaspoon, I forgot the measurement. Excuse me. 1/2 teaspoon salt. 1 teaspoon vanilla extract. 3 teaspoons baking powder. 2 tablespoons softened butter. For the crumb topping, you will need 1 pound butter, For the crumb topping, you will need 1 pound of frozen butter, 4 cups of flour, 1.5 cups sugar, 2 tablespoons of cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, powdered sugar for the top of the cake, and powdered sugar. And powdered sugar for the top of the cake. To begin, preheat your oven to 250 degrees. Grease a flour and, hold on. Grease and flour a large, preferably 11 by 15 jelly roll pan. Next, cream together sugar and butter. Add the egg. Add milk and vanilla. Stir in flour, salt, and baking powder. When the batter is smooth, pour into the pan and spread it evenly. For the crumb topping, add flour, sugar, cinnamon, and salt in a large mixing bowl. Cut frozen butter into small cubes. Using your hands, squeeze the butter into dry ingredients. Sprinkle the crumbs over the cake batter. You will bake this at 350 degrees for 30 minutes. When the cake cools, sift a generous amount of powdered sugar on top of crumbs. Alrighty. Add in my markers. Export. That goes to stolen audiobook. Okay. And I need to, close that. Yes. Let's check the copyright information. Stolen, opening, credits. Okay. Stolen, Love and Loss in the Time of COVID-19 by Elizabeth Yeager. Copyright 2025 by Elizabeth Yeager. Production copyright 2025 by Elizabeth Yeager. Blah, 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 blah. Production copyright 2025 by Elizabeth Yeager. Oh, I forgot to credit myself. Darn. Okay. Read for you by Danielle Moors. Copyright 2025 by Elizabeth Yeager. Production copyright 2025. What did I say before? How did I do the numbers? Yeah. Production copyright 2025 by Elizabeth Yeager. All rights reserved. Okay. Let me export that. Send my flags up. And closing credits. Come on. Why? There we go. This has been, oh, my mouth clicked. This has been Stolen, Love and Loss in the Time of COVID-19, written by Elizabeth Yeager. Read for you by Danielle Moors. We hope you have enjoyed this production. I can cut that off. We hope you have enjoyed this production. done. Markers. Thanks for the love. I appreciate it. Hello, Red Spark. Oop. Just exporting. All right, that is the end of Stolen. If you guys have any questions, I will hang out here for a bit. Oh yeah, anytime, Red Spark. It's a really fun job. If you want any information on it or you have questions, I am happy to answer. It's not as intimidating as you would think. Mostly, I just get to talk to myself in a padded room all day, so, you know, not a whole lot of danger. Thanks for the follow, Sherry. Yeah, it's fun, and it's a really kind community, and narrators are very supportive of other narrators, which is super nice. Ashes to caches. Are you Holly? I think you are Holly, and you changed your name on me, or maybe I just didn't notice before. She might have just gone right out, too. Yeah, I should be on, I am booked until like the end of June. So, and most of them I have permission to do live. I just realized I forgot to ask my next author, if I have permission for her book. So I need to do that, but she is a TikToker, so I'm assuming she'll say yes. I try to sign on every day at 10:30 for live narration, weekdays anyway. And then try to get about 2 hours of audio recorded, which is generally like 3.5-ish hours of being live. So I should be here. Look out for me. Yeah, of course. There's lots of other great narrators on here that you can follow as well. If you just search audiobook narrator, I'm sure you'll find many of us. I'll hang out for another minute in case anyone else has any questions or anything about the book or audiobooks in general. Thanks, Sherry. I appreciate it. And then I'm gonna hop off because I need to finish reading my next book so that I can prep it and send a sample to the author and hopefully get that approved today so I can start recording tomorrow. Hard to say, and it kind of depends. You can work at your own pace, which is really nice. So, and you often set your own deadlines unless you're working with a publisher. But a lot of us mostly work with indie authors. And so you can kind of choose however much you want to work in a day. But so there's about 3.5 to 4 hours of recording time every day. And then also admin stuff, like doing auditions and emailing publishers and reaching out and marketing yourself. And when you're doing lives, that's also a way of marketing. So that's really helpful in terms of that and just getting people to see you and your work. And then there's also the book prep. So
I'm finished my live recording now, and I need to go finish reading the book that I am hoping to start recording tomorrow. And I probably spend 4-ish hours a day reading as well. And then I also do my own editing and mastering, which can also take a couple of hours. And I don't have to do the editing and mastering every day. But it is a full-time job depending on how many books you are taking on. How many books you get, I should really say, because trying to audition doesn't necessarily mean you'll get books, and this is a very feast or famine career. For example, earlier in August and September, I had 1 book a month and was like, oh no, I'm not landing any of my auditions. And then end of September, I all of a sudden was booked until April. So it's kind of one of those things where you don't really know what is going to be happening next. But if it's something you love and you enjoy spending a lot of time alone in a small confined space, then there can be a decent bit. But it's like any business, right? You are an entrepreneur if you are doing this. It's your own business, and so you have to kind of think of it in that way. You want to start with professional level equipment, or you're going to end up spending more money later. I think that for me, the equipment startup cost was around $600 for a professional but low-level microphone. Still had great sound quality, and I was able to put out a professional product, but it wasn't like the top-of-the-line microphone. This isn't even the top-of-the-line microphone. It's a mid-range. But you will need a microphone, and not a USB one if you want to be doing this professionally. You will need, so since it's not a USB microphone, an interface, which is what connects your microphone to your computer. You will need a monitor that is separate from your computer because your computer will make too much noise to be in your booth with you. So I have a monitor in here that is connected to a laptop that is outside of my booth. And the thing that you're going to spend the most money on is the sound dampening equipment stuff on the walls. This booth was custom made because I'm by the highway, so I needed extra help to keep sound out in addition to dampening. But if you have a good closet that you can work in, my first booth was in an old house at a place that had less noise and not a highway right off the road. And I just had mattress pads from Walmart. And I had a layer of corkboard, which is really great for sound dampening, and then a layer of mattress pads from Walmart over that and just nailed to the wall. And then on the other side, I had a curtain rod and a comforter that was over it. So it doesn't have to be fancy, but that is really the most important thing. Even more important than your equipment is the space that you would be recording in, because you can have the best microphone in the world, but if your voice is bouncing off the wall and coming back to your microphone from different angles, you're going to sound like you're in a tin can, no matter how good your microphone is. And then also I had to buy the software that I record in, and I had to buy courses so that I know how to use the software that I record in. So, it was probably around $600 total for my startup equipment. And then as you go along and get better at it, you want to upgrade to higher level equipment that will last longer and be more bang for your buck. But starting out with the best low level equipment you can have is the way to do it. That way you're not dishing out extra money when you don't need to be. I didn't upgrade until around the 3-year mark for my microphone. So that is really dependent on you. There are a number of narration coaches, and they do, it's not cheap to have coaching. I worked with a guy on nonfiction. His name is Sean Pratt, because I knew that nonfiction was my weaker area. I'm very good at doing fictional work. and he was, I think, $200 for an hour session. And I saw him monthly. He had like a 12-month curriculum that kind of walked you through the business as well as the nonfiction kind of techniques that you would want to use. Then there's like, you don't necessarily need a business coach if you know how to run a business. And in that case, there's acting coaches. And there are a number of phenomenal ones, and they vary differently. I worked with one acting coach, Marguerite Shannon, or Shannon Parks, Marguerite Gavin, who I think I paid her $150 for an hour. And it really depends on what you need. She's wonderful before you start if you just need acting help, if you have no acting background. But also, if you have an acting background, you might not need that kind of help at this moment in time, and you might just want to work with somebody when you're having a problem with something, or if you need specific dialects or things like that. So it's really dependent on who you are and who the coaches that you want to work with are. But the coaching is not cheap, and it is, again, an investment in your career. But yeah, if you have an acting background, then you probably can get started without having coaching beforehand. And a great resource that I forgot about is called narratorsroadmap.com. There is a ton of information there on how to get started, where to go. There is a website called acx.com, which is connected with, it's an Amazon website, Audible. Indie authors can post their books. It's essentially a dating website for indie authors and narrators. So an author can post their book up there, and anyone and their mom can try out for it. But before you do that, if you have never done anything like this before, highly recommend you find a book in the public domain and practice doing a public domain book before you would sign a contract, because you want to make sure that you know exactly what you're doing and how to deliver a professional sounding product before you go in and give an author the impression that you know what you're doing, you know. But even before buying equipment, a good test to take for yourself is to find a book you like, and for 2 weeks, probably 3 hours a day, just go sit in your closet and read out loud to yourself. And every time you make a mistake, go back to the beginning of that sentence that you messed up and start again until you get it right and go through. And if at the end of that 2 weeks you don't hate your life and you still enjoy reading, then maybe being an audiobook narrator is for you. There are a lot of people who think that this would be a good career for them, and then they spend all of the money and buy all of the things and realize it is not something they want to do. So putting yourself through that test first is a good idea, because you don't want to waste $600 in this economy, or ever. Yeah, of course. And again, there's tons of info. If you search audiobook narration on TikTok or in YouTube, you will find a lot. That test was a Sean Pratt test that I found on TikTok before I started. So it was a good piece of advice, and is a good way to filter out some people who probably shouldn't be doing this and should save their money. Awesome. Awesome. Well, feel free to message me anytime if you just even need the websites written out again. There's also a good number of books on it and audiobooks. I'm glad you're going to do that test first. I found it to be lovely. It's not an overstimulating place in your closet and with only one voice. The rest of the world is a little loud sometimes. Okay, yeah, I will message you the websites. You are Sherry C. Okay, let me follow you now so I can can find you. And send those later. Alright, I'll hang out for another minute in case there is anything else anybody wants to know. Thanks for the likes. They're very helpful. Alrighty, I am going to head out and get reading. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Thank you. Oh, you got one. Here we go. So it depends. Yeah, sometimes you will just send it to the author. The way that I am doing it for this one, yeah, so you just find a book on the website, and there is a script that is there for the audition, and you read whatever excerpt from the script that the author has chosen, and there's a place where you upload the file and you can send a little message if you want, and then they go through and listen to all of the auditions that they are sent and choose the one they like the best and send an offer. That's working with indie authors, and that's just one way of working with the indie authors. That's where a lot of people start out. You also, like, I've been talking to authors on TikTok and getting work from being here as well, and that's just like, they send an email and ask about your schedule. So indie is independently published. So they're not working with a publisher, and they are just publishing on their own. Yeah, of course. Happy to help. All right, I am going to head out and get reading. Thank you guys so much for being here. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I will message you, Sherry. Bye.